All right, here we go.
Okay. Hold it. Give it a little bit of lead time here.
All right.
Okay. Okay, you need that one? Okay, here it is.
Here it is.
That helps.
So,
okay.
I'm the grandson of this guy. And these are letters that he sent from Europe in the times of when he was about your age. He was, all right, maybe 22, 23 years old when he was going over to Europe. And I'm wondering, how does a guy who was born in Ohio turn into someone who helped participate in international politics? Because that's, in a sense, what we want all of you to care about. That's the basic question. So I was trying to get inside your world. What do you know about World War I, the influenza of 1918? What was it like for this guy when he was your age? Well, when he was 16 years old, his favorite aunt nearly died in the Lusitania. I mean, that's like people going down in airplanes today. You took boats to go to Europe. Not a lot of people had passports. Now we have 120 million people out of 300 that have passports in the U.S. Back then, you might have had 2 million people. Well, that's a number for you guys to look up. But what were the influences in his time? And I'm giving you guys this sort of timeline that I worked up. He was born in 1901. 1912, there was a large ship that went down, and then his aunt went down in 1916. 1917, we entered the First World War. I mean, this guy's 16 years old. I bet he's hoping, I hope they wrap this thing up before I turn 18, right?
And they did.
Oh, that's good. Phew. So what's going through his mind when he goes on to Princeton campus and the former president of that university had just finished serving 8 years, Woodrow Wilson. And Woodrow Wilson had this big plan. He wanted us to be part of the League of Nations. My granddad spent 4 years at Princeton, left at age 22. It was 1924. There's a little discrepancy. Born in 1901, he actually graduated at age 23 because he lost a year because of a fire. Imagine having a fire. All the records burned, so you have to repeat a year.
Seriously?
Yeah.
At Princeton?
No, high school.
Okay.
So.
And what academy was that?
Deerfield Academy.
Okay, real school. Okay.
Right, real school. And so he had to go to a Mercerburg in Pennsylvania to finish off. So when was Prohibition? He doesn't mention anything about what it was like, but let's get inside his mind. That's the challenge, I think, here. I've got all these letters that I'm, one of 4 grandchildren. I haven't read them. No, not really. I've read them enough to know that he recounts the day's stories. But I'm trying to help you guys get into his life. What was it like to be in Europe and, be in New Jersey during Prohibition, and you want to go party? I mean, come on. Isn't that what you do in college? Right. And so why did he choose international relations? It was a new field. He went over, he got a Carnegie Foundation grant. Imagine competing for that. Only 15 were awarded. And he kept applying for it. So for 4 years, he was able to study at the Sorbonne in Paris. He would spend time going to Spain.
I've heard of the Sorbonne. What is the Sorbonne?
I'd say sort of like graduate school. But he had to learn French in order to go over there. And so there are some assumptions. What was it like to be a 17-year-old? World War I going on. There's the influenza going on. I'm not sure what kind of project you guys want to do, but nobody has this.
So
Nobody's seen this.
These are primary source documents.
Source.
That is exactly what the National History Day is based on. It has to be all primary source documents, and we have to find some way to link them into the theme of turning points in history. Now, you've just mentioned a bunch of turning points in history. From 1912, the Titanic, goes down. 1916, Lusitania. Isn't that what really got us involved in World War II and World War I? You've got World War I as a war in general. You've got the influenza. That changed. That was a game changer. You've got Prohibition. You've got...
What did Prohibition do to kids? This guy probably decided, I'm going to figure out a way to get to Europe. I love drinking wine.
Who doesn't, right? So we've got to find in these documents, in these letters, okay, that are written by his grandpa, we've got to find the turning points in history.
And here's perhaps the big key. He witnesses the buildup. From 1928, he's writing his thesis about great powers and raw materials. He made the link. That was his sort of specialty at university. He said, Germany doesn't have sufficient raw materials to become a great industrial power. It's going to have to either buy them or take over resources by walking into Czechoslovakia. That's a nice place. We've got some good minerals in there.
Coal fields.
So, at the time, the United States was very isolationist. What does he do in 1935? He goes back to Cleveland, takes over a women's club called the Council for World Affairs, which still exists today. And he turned it, they met once a month and had maybe 40 members. Within a year, he had 1,000 people coming weekly for international speakers to come in. He was one of the forces where, even after the war, January 1947, George Marshall makes a speech in Cleveland. And June 1947, he announces the Marshall Plan. The elements of that speech at Harvard were first mentioned in January in Cleveland.
And that group he was in is now called the World Affairs Council.
World Affairs Council.
And the World Affairs Council has a competition called World Quest that Oxbridge will be participating in February of 2013. So that's your grandfather that started that group, and we are participating in it. So there's an Oxbridge link here. Okay, interesting stuff. Now, the letters that you have are all from the 1920s. A lot of these that I've read over, it's just general kind of, well, first of all, the language is very interesting. People don't write like this anymore. Okay. Now when I communicate with my kids, it's all by text, and if I write a 4-line text, that's considered long. Look at the kind of stuff that he was writing, and it's all really nicely written. It's prose.
And when we're talking about turning points, his father was an engineer. His brother became an engineer. Why didn't he become an engineer? There was something in he was very close to his aunt, and his aunt was an architect, did a lot of traveling, international perspective, somehow infected my grandfather. That was a turning point because he was able to sit in on League of Nations meetings in 1924-25.
So that's his personal turning point in life. Is there a way we can make this apply to, rather than personal, from a national standpoint, a certain historical relevancy? Okay, I love the formation of the World Affairs Council. Okay, first we'd have to say why that is an important group and his role in forming it. That's easy stuff. Is there anything in these letters, or is this all background showing this is why we think that he ended up being in a position to have the mental mindset and the ability to create a World Affairs Council?
It's my perception that Cleveland became influential because he decided to return. There were points along that road to get him into, if he hadn't gotten the exposure, Japanese student was his classmate at Princeton University. Let's just